You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, we're Enterprise-Splaining, the podcast where we explain Star Trek Enterprise to each other and to you. I'm Maria, and these are my co-hosts Bill.
Hello.
And Jamie.
Hi.
And today we have a special guest, Bryan, from the podcast Trek, Marry, Kill. Bryan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with Star Trek in general and with Enterprise in particular.
Hi, everybody. I started getting into Star Trek. It was like the last thing my father and I bonded over before he died. He introduced it to me when I had the chicken pox. I was the last kid in my class to get chicken pox. And he showed me, he's like, hey, I think you watched it like this. So we watched it. That was great. Remember Me was my first episode of TNG. And that's it ever since. That was a long time ago that happened. And so eventually the pandemic came around and I had been wondering if I was going to do a Star Trek podcast. And finally I just did it. Star Trek inspired so much more than just like, oh, it reminded me of my dad. It's what got me into wanting to work in television, film and television. I moved down to LA after college. I worked in the industry for about 20 years or so. So it kind of inspired my adulthood as well as filled my imagination as a child. Enterprise, that was when I was in college. That was the new Star Trek show, and Voyager started just as I was entering high school, and so that was the new show. And I had found by the time it premiered a few Trekkies at my college.
There's a couple around.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, hey, let's get together and have another reason to hang out and watch it. And that lasted about 6 weeks because we were watching Enterprise and we were like, I'm good. Maybe I've reached the natural end of watching Star Trek regularly. And as Kristen and I have done, Kristen's my co-host on Trek, Marry, Kill, as we've dipped into some Enterprise episodes. She's never seen the show, but I have. It's kind of remarkable to me that this is, we live in an era of ChatGPT, generative AI, whatever. This is basically write me a Star Trek show through the prism of a Maxim magazine writer.
We have said that exact same thing.
Exactly the same.
Like
if AI existed, this would be an AI written Star Trek.
Which is crazy. I've met Scott Bakula one time when he worked on Boston Legal. He was a guest actor.
Cool.
And there was nothing in that energy that suggested, like, he is playing a character. His character, can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
We're talking about Enterprise. You can swear on this show.
Yeah, his character is an asshole. He's a douchebag. He's whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That is not Scott Bakula at all. So you've got this weird prequel concept that's kind of not a wrong concept, but it's kind of like shoehorned into like, what if it's primitive, but what if it's not? And then you have Scott Bakula's charm being like, what if he's John Wayne with a toothache? And it's just like that. So my relationship with Enterprise is I have several blind spots in it from all the times that I went away from it. And season 1, the end of season 1, the beginning of most of season 2, a lot of season 3, and then season 4 actually did go back and do a rewatch because everyone said it was great. I guess you'll find out.
We'll find out.
But you've never seen the episode we're talking about today.
No!
All right. And
That's how
today,
we like it.
yeah, that's the best way, because today we are going to be talking about the Star Trek Enterprise episode Carbon Creek. However, I am the only person here who's actually watched it, so it's my job to explain to my co-hosts and guest what happened on the episode. But before we get to that, let's first talk a little bit about last week's episode. Last week, Jamie told us about the episode Shockwave Part 2, the conclusion to the Season 1 cliffhanger. Bill and I were finally able to watch it, and Bryan, I think you say you sort of remember this from when you watched it.
Floating head in part 1. That's kind of all I remember.
Yeah, I think that was the most important thing. So, Bill, now that we've seen it, anything you'd noticed that you'd like to talk about or add to Jamie's thoughts from last week?
I only have a couple of thoughts. Cliffhanger episodes always tend to be disappointing because the solution is very rarely as good as, like, we've set up in a situation they cannot escape from. Here's how they escape from it. So those tend to be iffy episodes. Getting to the point about Archer being an asshole, which I believe I brought up when we covered the first part, is like, he doesn't care that the entire planet Earth has been destroyed except in how it affects him. To the point where he says to Daniels, he's like, I realize your little utopia is gone, and I sympathize, but I deserve some answers.
Yeah, as though that's not also the future of all humanity.
Don't matter.
It's really saved by the fact that, like, there's no bodies laying around. Apparently this is so far in the future, like, all the corpses have disintegrated, but not all the buildings. And then he says when they finally get to the library, he adds the line, he's like, well, we're going to use these books to figure out what you did to the last 1,000 years when you brought me here.
Okay, so now I remember, is the cliffhanger he's looking out, like, from an office building at the desolation?
Yeah.
And he's been
That's
stranded in
it.
the past?
Skeletons of Earth, yes. They have been.
I remember exactly where I was sitting when I watched that now. But, like, I'm sitting on my couch alone, because, again, the Star Trek nerds Let's Watch Enterprise group, that had disbanded weeks previously. But I watched it, my thought was this: I'm not interested in finding out what happens. It seems like a tough break, and I don't care. And that was my thought.
You were in the common area of the dormitory.
No, I was an RA, so I got to watch it. My secret shame of Star Trek I could watch in the privacy of
Damn
my
it, I was really hoping you had it set up in the common area and you had the chair set up as if you were on the bridge and you were sitting in the center.
Flipping my chair around to explain it to everybody that came through. Yeah,
Just blasting Faith of the Heart.
The only other major note I have is that the Suliban guns look like squirt guns from the 1990s. And I kind of appreciated it that they didn't just make them like fake metal, but they literally look like they had been spray painted to not look like guns so that the police wouldn't shoot them if they came around. They were all like day glow with like lines through them. So
Okay, so I've listened to your show before, but I don't think I heard any of your thoughts. I think this is pre-Daniels appearing, and I need to know the group's consensus on Daniels.
oh god.
I actually don't mind Daniels. I really dislike time travel in general, and particularly when it's done poorly. And so, Daniels comes with all of that baggage, but as a character, I don't hate him or anything. I think he's fine.
I like Daniels because he's this time traveler from the future. He traveled back in time 800 years, joined the Enterprise, and spent 4 months just making breakfast for Archer.
Eggs.
So that's all he did, just waiting for something to happen, apparently.
As with all the actors on the show, I like the actor who plays Daniels. I think he's doing a good job. I think the character would be 100 times better if he was annoyed with the Enterprise crew as we are. If he just showed up and it's instead of you have a very important mission, he's like, you have a very important mission.
I need you to listen to what I'm saying.
Listen, cavemen, cave people. Yes, exactly. But my point is that I think they miscast that character completely. I don't know why they went with the substitute science teacher look. I don't like his posture. He's kind of mincing. He's a wimp. And if they were trying to make that the point of the character, they didn't really do that. And I just was like, why would you put Scott Bakula, this big strapping horse riding man, next to this wimp who's bossing him around? And why is he bald if he's from the future? They cured baldness. You know why? Because I bet in the 90s that they were very much, that was the rise of actually bald men have more testosterone. Which, whatever, fine. No offense to bald people. I'm just saying, you put someone like that next to Scott Bakula and you say they're a time traveler, it's completely missing that element now of what you said of why is he not more annoyed with them? Because he doesn't have the on-screen gravitas to convey that. He cannot be a higher status character than these other people, than the cretins of Enterprise, because he doesn't look the part. It bothers me to this day. I'm like, why did they cast this guy?
I love the way he kind of looks down on everyone and talks down to everybody. I think it's funny, when Archer's wait, none of this time travel stuff makes sense, and he's like, you're just too stupid to understand it.
Yeah, that's true.
Love it. I love it.
I had a couple couple of very weird little nitpicky things, like the scene where Malcolm and Trip are trying to communicate in their quarters, and Malcolm keeps saying, okay, now change this, now fix this. How did Trip understand him if it wasn't fixed? And how did he know what to do if they weren't hearing each other?
They're in rooms right next to each other, so he can just hear them through the wall. Well, that was the weird. Sorry, this is just a very minor thing. Like when they like put everybody in their rooms and cut off the comms, the Suliban command Trip to shut down the comms, which I thought was weird because you're asking somebody who's on the crew to. And by the way, don't put any secret back doors in. Don't.
But he didn't.
No, he didn't.
He did exactly what he was told. And then I had many questions about Hoshi's bra situation. Because...
Yeah, I don't understand why she wasn't wearing a bra.
So she wasn't wearing a bra.
Wait, hold on. What now?
Hoshi was topless.
I don't remember that. I feel like I would have remembered that.
So, Brian, there's a scene where Hoshi is climbing through the Jeffries tubes to try to get to the doctor.
Her shirt gets stuck and it comes off and then she's topless.
Yeah.
Okay, the show is very nips and bulge forward in the first season.
It is.
That was the network note, is like every man should have a roll of quarters in his pants and every woman should look like she just stepped out of the freezer. Yeah, the walk-in freezer.
And I get that. I get all of that. And fine. All right, you're going to not give her a bra. She's going to be completely topless when she goes into Malcolm's quarters. However, she then told Malcolm to get her a shirt. And in the next scene, she has that shirt on and is clearly wearing a bra. So did Malcolm have a bra in his quarters?
Yes, he did.
That was exactly her size?
Well, no, she probably... So here's my read on that, is that what she was wearing as she was crawling through the tubes looked like a sports bra. It looked like some tight, supportive undergarment that was one piece. So when it got... No, it's ridiculous that it got caught on the hook and completely came off.
Which was another thing. Why is every woman in a crop top? Okay, that's a whole nother story. But
and to your point, what she was... Obviously, they put the actress in a bra in the real world. My feeling is she went back and got her undergarment back from the hook and put that on underneath the shirt so she wasn't wandering around.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think Malcolm just he stole her clothes because he's a creep. And
that seems way more likely to me.
And he probably just passed it off as like crewman so-and-so's, and she was like, all right.
No, that's no. As we've established in the canon of this podcast that Malcolm is a closeted gay man, and that's the fake bra he keeps around that he can throw on like a door handle to convince people that he's had like, moments before.
Right.
There's nothing you could say about Malcolm Reed that I would not agree with. So that smear works as well as any others.
Right.
The only other thing that I had was, Stephen, my partner, actually made this point, which is at the very end when Archer comes back in a Suliban ship and they're like, hey, Archer, cool, you're here. I'm so glad to hear you. The Suliban can shapeshift. How did they not know? Why was it not possible that it was a Suliban who had shapeshifted into Archer?
Can all the Suliban shapeshift? I guess I don't really understand their powers because they rarely use them.
I mean, it doesn't matter if all of them can. It just matters that some of them can, and they don't know who they have.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Because we know they can also become invisible, but then we've only seen that, they don't really seem to take advantage of their powers very often.
Except they are on the ceiling a lot. They love being on the ceiling.
Yeah, they do like to just hang out on ceilings.
They paid a lot of money for that asset.
Wouldn't that be amazing? If for the rest of this season it's a Suliban impersonating Archer, and the way they find out is he's being a better captain, like he's making rational decisions.
He's
T'Pol
like competent.
figures it out almost immediately.
Yes.
But T'Pol doesn't say it. He's like, well, he's doing a really good job, actually.
Maybe I should just leave this.
Our efficiency is up 15% since the Suliban took over.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, anything else that anybody has to comment on that?
I do just want to say, if my voice sounds a little strange this episode, it's still me. It's still Jamie. I just
that's something that Suliban Jamie would say.
Yeah, that's exactly what Suliban Jamie would have said.
I've
I
had
was
a
gonna say you sounded more efficient. Yeah.
I've had a cold this week, so
Oh.
I just lost my voice a little bit. So if I sound funny, that's why.
All right. Well, you sound fine to me, so hopefully our listeners will not even notice. So we're almost ready to talk about this week's episode, but before we do that, let's take a short break to hear from one of our sister podcasts on the ESO network.
Holy podcast! It's Howdy Mike Gordon.
Howdy!
What are you doing here, Mike?
Well, Drew, I'm here to talk Batman 66, of course.
Batman 66?
That's right, folks. Join Drew Leiter and I every Wednesday for the Bat Chums podcast. We will discuss, recap, and review the Batman 60 series episode by episode.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Come on, Bat Chum. We don't have one moment to lose.
Don't worry, the worst is yet to come.
All right, let's get into this week's episode. Computer, what episode will we be talking about this week?
Carbon Creek. After Archer and Trip become curious about a visit to Paul made to a Pennsylvania mining town called Carbon Creek, she tells the two a tale about a Vulcan ship that crash-landed in 1957.
All right, well, first, as always, let's start with a game of two truths and a lie. I am going to tell you two truths and a lie about this episode, and you guys need to guess which is the lie. Are we ready?
Yes.
Number one, the main bridge crew of the Enterprise are not at all involved in the main story being told in this episode.
Ooh, okay.
Number two, the Enterprise is not at all involved in the main story being told in this episode.
Oh, interesting.
And number three, caves are not at all involved in the main story being told in this episode.
See, this is a Maria episode, and you are a natural attractant for cave episodes.
That's
It's like the opposite end
why
of
I
the
put that
magnet.
in there.
They just come towards you.
No, I think the caves is a lie. Caves are a lie.
I'm-
No
I'm-
caves.
I'm also with the caves.
All right.
That's the
so you're saying there are caves in this episode.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you're saying... Wait, are you saying...
Wait,
No,
sorry, wait.
Jamie is saying...
Two truths.
Jamie is
So,
saying...
I
That,
think you're lying that caves aren't involved.
oh,
Okay.
okay. Well, you have to pick
It's
what
a
the lie
double
is.
negative.
Creek, if there's a literal creek, if I know my Paramount Studios, there's no way they're not going to use
Okay.
the cave set
So what is...
next to a
So what is your pick for what the lie is?
Yeah,
The caves.
wait.
You
The
said
caves.
the caves are not involved,
Yeah, the
right?
caves are not in the episode.
okay.
Is
God,
the
double
statement?
negative.
So
Sorry,
it's a double
I should've-
negative.
Sorry,
So
didn't realize
I
this would be that confusing.
definitely think there's going to be caves because it's a Maria episode, and Maria episodes get caves.
So wait, so the second lie was the Enterprise itself is not involved with this episode at all?
That's right.
Okay, I'm going to say that that's the lie just to spread the odds around a bit.
All
I don't
right.
think that this show is smart enough to not, well, maybe by accident they forgot to write that, they forgot it was an Enterprise episode and forgot to include it.
After the Shockwave experience, you're like, you know what? This show doesn't need more of the Enterprise.
These people and the ship.
I'm not going to be pedantic and point out that the Enterprise is probably in the opening credits, but...
Please be clear.
not-
I said in the main story
Sure.
being told in this
Oh,
episode.
in the main story. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
all right.
you can
well,
get
let's-
some like at the beginning and the end.
All right, we're not... Okay, I'm done. Okay, I made my choice.
All
Decision
right.
registered.
Let's get into it. Cold open. We start with Trip to Paul and Archer having dinner.
Uh-oh.
Archer is pouring wine for T'Pol and asking her to say when, and she stops him with just a tiny little bit in her glass. She says she doesn't usually drink wine, but she's allowing herself the small indulgence because they are celebrating her 1-year anniversary of joining the Enterprise crew. Woo!
Isn't that then everybody's 1-year anniversary of joining
Yes,
the crew?
but
Didn't they all start at the same time?
They toast and T'Pol tries to downplay it, but Archer reminds her that the previous record for a Vulcan serving on a human ship was 2 weeks. And she corrects him and says, no, it was actually 10 days.
She then grabs the bottle and empties it into her wine glass.
Exactly. Archer then immediately makes it kind of weird by telling her that he's working on her annual crew evaluation. But he tells her not to worry, it's just a formality. T'Pol, unfazed, says the High Command has also asked her to fill out an evaluation for him. Also just a formality. This is not where Archer was hoping the conversation would go. So he tries to get back on track. He says he's been looking at her record and he noticed that while she was stationed in Sausalito, she took a 5-day leave and went to an old mining town in Pennsylvania called Carbon Creek.
Ah! Sorry, the titular line. How often do we get the titular line?
I mean, there was 2 days and 2 nights where they just said it over and over again.
They don't say broken bow and broken bow.
Yeah.
Yeah, which actually, at the end of that episode, we were like, why is it called Broken Bow?
It took us so long to figure that out. All right, so Archer is curious as to what the heck she was doing in this mining town. T'Pol says it was a personal matter, which of course only makes them both more curious. And Trip says it's not fair for her to hold out on them. They tell her plenty of stories.
I'm sure she enjoys listening to all of them.
All of their stories.
Archer's just telling about the frat on the other side of the lake or whatever. Like every story of that.
Yeah, all their stories are basically water polo games.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Archer's
in.
probably giving her like every single thing that happened in his last water polo game.
I mean, Trips from Sausalito, no, Trips from Florida. So maybe he does have some good stories, you would think.
I imagine all of Tripp's Florida stories are like Manny Jacinto's Jacksonville stories from The Good Place.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, T'Pol asks if they'd like her to tell them a story. And of course they say yes. And she tells them that she went to Carbon Creek because she wanted to visit, are you ready for this? The site of first contact between humans and Vulcans.
Ooh,
Wait,
okay.
What a twist.
That is the exact reaction that the guys have. They laugh. They tell her she's way off. First contact happened in Montana. But she says, no, actually, it didn't.
Like, even I have seen that movie.
Right.
They've worked with her for a year. And they still, when she says something they disagree with, laugh at her.
They laugh at her and correct
Those
her.
fucking assholes. They are such assholes.
Yeah, I want to say, like, my reaction is, what? I didn't realize that. I've been wrong this whole time. Not, what?
You're
She's
wrong.
so stupid.
You dumb.
She's never...
She's so dumb.
She's always right, except when she's talking about time travel. But with everything else, she's always right.
Vulcan science director.
God, I forgot the Vulcans don't believe in time
The
travel.
Vulcan science
She
director has
becomes the
determined.
dumbest person.
Even after seeing the floating head, she's like, I don't know about... I see your head floating, but I don't think this is time travel.
So,
Oh, secret history time. All right.
she explains that the Vulcans visited Earth long before Zephyr Cochrane in Bozeman in 2063.
We gave them fire.
And in fact, T'Pol's great-grandmother, who she calls her foremother's mother, it's a weird thing she says, but it's basically her great-grandmother, was one of them, was one of the Vulcans.
I bet she looks exactly like T'Pol.
They look confused, and she offers to tell them the story and theme song. I would like to say, with season 2, Steven was extremely annoyed because the skip intro button doesn't show up until at least 2 lines into the song, and one of the things he loves to do most is hit the skip intro button fast enough so we don't hear any of the song at all. But I digress. The theme song brings us to Jamie's Diane Warren update of the week. What you got, Jamie?
All right, well, before I go into my Diane Warren news, Bryan, I just need to hear, what are your thoughts on the theme song? Do you remember the first time you heard it?
Yeah, it was just much laughter and guffawing and kind of breathlessly wondering how the hell they could do this. And then remembering that they're trying to make a show that's set in the... This was a post-middle-aged man's read of what is a hip song we could put in front of our show, because all TV shows are using hit songs as their intro music now. And they went from U2, which was a ridiculous swing for the fences, and they settled on this. And I can't believe that what they actually had was that calling song that was used in the promos that everybody liked and agreed, like, that's fine. Oh, they're kind of trying to make Enterprise hip and cool. Did you?
Oh, I don't know
Any
about
of you
that
remember those
song.
promos?
No.
Mm-mm.
I'll try to sing a bar of it. If I could, then I would. I'll go wherever you will go. That was the music they were using to promote Enterprise. And so everyone kind of assumed that that was going to be the song. And then when it premiered, we got Diane Warren taking a baseball bat to all of our crotches and then our skulls. And that's where we're at. I'm sorry, it's not Diane Warren. Who's the singer?
Russell.
Russell Watson.
Yeah,
not
Russell.
Watson.
Russell. I think it is Russell
Watson?
Watson.
Okay. And again, no offense to him, everyone did what they were supposed to do. But it's like it didn't feel like a bait and switch. It's just like, way to not have your finger on the pulse. Rick Berman had his 2 fingers on the floor and he thought he was hitting the neck.
We have got to find these promos. We'll have to look for those.
Yeah,
I need to see those. So, into our Diane Warren news. So, at the time that we are recording this, the Oscar nominations were just released. But as people are listening to it, the Oscars will have already happened weeks previously. So, everybody listening already knows what happened. But we do not. So, for us, Diane Warren just got her 16th Oscar nomination for Best Original Song for the song The Journey from the 688. It is still very funny to me that Faith of the Heart was written by somebody who now has 16 Oscar nominations. I mean, big deal.
And originally for the film Patch Adams.
Yeah.
Which is so silly.
Yeah, they had so many better options, is what you're saying, and they chose this song.
Oh, you mean literally any other song?
Yeah. But even if you wanted to limit it to Diane Warren songs, I feel like there were better choices.
Yeah, I don't know,
Maybe not.
honestly. I just think that her style of music doesn't really work for Star Trek.
You know what though? Good for her. She's taking it in stride. She's like, I get to go to the Oscars every year. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. If she loses again, she will then be tied for the most ever nominations without a win with Greg P. Russell, who has 16 nominations for sound and sound mixing. He got those faster than she did because he was often getting 2 nominations per ceremony.
Oh, wow.
So
That's kind of more painful.
yeah, Diane Warren is getting, like, this is bit like, there's never been an Oscars where she's had 2 nominations and 1 Oscars, right? She's getting every nomination.
One at a time.
And fun fact, Greg P. Russell actually did get a 17th nomination at one point, but it got rescinded due to telephone lobbying, which is prohibited.
Oh my goodness.
So that's why he's only had 16.
Well, good luck, Diane.
Additionally, if you all remember, last year I talked about how there was a Diane Warren documentary that premiered at South by Southwest called Relentless. It has finally been released. You can now watch it. And you might be thinking, wow, Jamie, what streaming service can we watch this on? The answer is Masterclass.
Oh, no.
It's not on a normal streaming service. It's listed as a class on Masterclass.
Oh, well, that's not a documentary.
Even though it's a movie, it is a documentary.
They sold it to Masterclass. That is actually a funnier one. My joke was going to be, is it on Diane Warren Plus? Masterclass, actually.
My guess was going to be Acorn for some reason.
She's not British.
No,
is she?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's so fucking weird.
But
The Brits just feel sorry for her. Yeah, they're like...
It's just so funny. I guess this is why it took so long to come out. I guess no streaming service wanted this documentary. So yeah, it's listed as a class. It's weird because it's definitely not a class. It's just a documentary about like a year in her life leading up to her honorary Oscar. So I don't know. I don't know how it's a class, but you can watch it now on Masterclass. I will be paying $10 for a 1-month subscription so I can watch it and I will report back. So that's all the news this week in Diane Warren.
Well, thank you, Jamie. So now that the theme song is complete, we can get into this episode, which means we go directly into T'Pol's story.
So I'm so excited about like this episode that's just like a flashback.
So we're in space and we see Sputnik float by. And then we pan over to a little Vulcan ship, and there are 4 Vulcans on board. 3 men and 1 woman, presumably T'Pol's great-grandmother, Tamir, who is being played by Jolene Blaylock in the great TV trope of where somebody somewhere in your past, there is an ancestor who looks exactly like you, because that happens all the time.
She doesn't have like a gray streak. She doesn't have longer hair. It's just straight up.
Same age, same look.
Oh, I definitely thought they would have like changed her hair or something.
They might have changed it a little bit, but she's still got that short hair, so it's
weird.
Yeah.
Do they do the thing where Sputnik collides with the Vulcan ship? It just like goes off.
No, Sputnik just kind of floats by, and then we see the Vulcan ship. T'Pol's narrating. She explains that the team had gone to Earth to check out the launch of Sputnik, but after 3 weeks, they had problems with the ship, and they had to make an emergency landing. So we see the Vulcans in the ship, like running around trying to fix the problem and clearly failing. Jamie, you are going to love these retro Vulcan uniforms. They're
so
very cool. They look like they're made almost entirely of leather in like different shades of brown with these like black accents and these huge like gold crests on the chest. They're very, very cool.
Oh,
yeah.
That feels very different from what we've seen at
It's
Vulcan.
extremely different. It's really
So
cool.
they have giant disco medallions, or is it like
No, they're like crests, and actually like what they're wearing is a jacket, and they like the crests come apart when you open up the jacket. It's kind of cool. You'll see.
Interesting. Okay.
So Tamir, who is T'Pol's great-grandmother, Tamir attempts to send a distress call to the High Command right before the ship hits the atmosphere. They crash land, the ship is wrecked, and the captain is dead, which means Tamir is now the captain.
Cut back to Enterprise. Trip is like, wait a minute, a woman was in charge now?
Hold on. You Vulcans have a protocol for that?
You have a chain of command?
But they do cut back to dinner, and the guys are skeptical about many things, and they're not skeptical about her becoming the captain. They are skeptical, well, first of all, about how this is the first time they're hearing about it, and secondly, how old T'Pol really is if she's only 3 generations removed from this event that happened 200 years ago. But Vulcans live a really long time, so it's not that surprising.
Which they know from Fallen Hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already know that she's the oldest person on the ship. We don't
And
know
they do
how
talk about it.
These guys have goldfish memory.
Well, I think it's more that Trip can't do
They're
math.
so dumb. So dumb.
Because Archer has to explain, like, well, Vulcans can live, like, 100 to 150 years, so Trip's like, fine. Anyway,
Trip.
they eventually shut up and let her continue. This Vulcan subspace transmitter was damaged, so they have no idea if the distress signal they sent actually made it out. And after a week, they had used up their rations, and 5 days after that, they were starving and desperate. So we see the 3 Vulcans in this makeshift camp in the forest. And they detect 2 life forms approaching, and it turns out to be a couple of deer. One of the Vulcan men, whose name we learn is Mistral, suggests they eat one of the deer, and the other is shocked at this idea, saying they can't resort to savagery.
Of course not.
But Mistral has a better idea. He wants to go check out a small settlement that's about 6 kilometers away, and they argue about it. Tamir and the other Vulcan, whose name I don't think is ever actually mentioned, so I'm just going to be calling him Vulcan number 3. Tamir and Vulcan 3 think it's too dangerous to expose themselves to humans, but Mistral says he's willing to take a risk. What are they going to do? Would it be weirder if they just died and left weird skeletons?
I'm very excited to see what disguise they use to cover their ears.
Yeah.
What sort of giant hat?
Yeah. So
I'm so surprised they didn't do the transition from seeing the deer and then the deer were like over a spit.
Yeah.
Like over a fire. Just do that. We gotta do what we had to do.
It had to happen. So
we start seeing a human over a spit.
Yeah, exactly. So Mistral is like, I don't care what you guys say. I'm going. He walks off. And Tamir yells after him, but he refuses to stop. So she tells Vulcan 3 to stay at camp, and she goes after Mistral.
Maria, you mean to tell me that camp does not use the cave?
There's
set?
no cave. At this point, there is no cave.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Okay. All right.
They're in the woods. They're in the woods.
I know, but it's Star Trek, so the woods has like 9 quotation marks.
So they go to town and they're kind of checking it out from the outskirts. And Mistral says they have to disguise themselves. So we get the standard steal clothes off a clothesline scene, which includes Tamir standing behind a white bed sheet and changing so you can see her figure as she's putting on a dress.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, Brian, you can literally see her nipples. Like, the shadow
Fantastic.
shows it.
In fairness, not every TV was HD then.
Great work, everyone.
They didn't think it would show up.
Okay, that's really, because, like, I'm trying to imagine, even if your nipples are hard, to be at the correct angle, to be able to, like, in shadow.
To make sure.
They may not have even been on her actual nipples.
God.
They could have just whatever angle to create the shadow.
They may have added that shit in post, but they did it. It had to be there. When she comes out from behind the sheet, she's got the dress on backwards, which I actually thought was a cute touch because, like, how would you know how clothes work?
Yeah.
But Mistral tells her, I think you have it on backwards. So she goes back behind the sheet, and then we see the shadow again as she, like, pulls it up.
We see the shadow. We don't just see like Looney Tunes style. We see the sheet and then like clothes flying up in the air. As if
You kind of like you were setting me up to be like, I really like this, and then you're like, no, and then Rick Berman's like, I want to see him again.
Yeah, let's see him
Show him
twice. Meanwhile, Mistral finds a beanie to cover his ears. Tamir just pulls her hair down.
Mm-hmm.
What year are we in?
Gotta be the 60s.
Late 50s.
Yeah, that's Sputnik.
Okay,
yeah.
so Sputnik is our cue. Okay.
Yeah, Sputnik, so it'd be like late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, so they walk into town and they see a bunch of miners who are clearly getting off of their shift. They look all dirty and tired, and Tamir wonders if they're prisoners.
Yeah, wait, sorry, you said
Commentary.
Tamir's hair, she's able to cover the ears even though her hair's that short?
Yep.
Huh. Because when we saw T'Pol do that once, she was wearing a long wig, pretending
Yeah,
to be...
no, they just cover it in her, like, I know she has a pixie cut, but she does have kind of longer sideburns, so it works.
Jolie
Okay.
Blaylock just pulls the wig off and lets her natural hair fall down. Why
Well,
am I
that's
wearing
sort
this
of what
thing? don't know.
that's sort of what I thought she was gonna do, but they did
Right.
not. So Tamir wonders if the miners are prisoners. Mistral says he doesn't think so. He thinks they're laborers, and Tamir just sort of looks at him, not impressed. She says it's hard to believe that these people are capable of launching an artificial satellite. So they keep walking, and as they're walking, they hear a radio and see a bunch of guys crowded around a car, and the radio's playing a baseball game. And so they kind of walk over to listen in and watch as the guys they were listening to a play, and a player gets out, and they all, they're all like bemoaning it. And again, Tamir posits that they're listening to some form of combat.
Yes!
But Mistral says he thinks it's entertainment. Tamir looks surprised and confused by this.
Remind me, what state is this in again?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, right? Okay.
Yeah. It's a small mining town in Pennsylvania.
I fucking love it. I never get tired of it in time travel things where they get everything wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're going to the future, if you're going to the past, you hear something that we as the audience know, and they get it absolutely wrong. Like Blast from the Past. Like he sees punk rockers like, mutants must have been radiation, exposed to radiation.
It's actually kind of weird that Mistral always knows what it is. Like he gets it immediately, whereas T'Pol does not, or Tamir does not, rather.
They were supposed to be there studying humans, right?
But they were not. They were never on the planet. They were observing from space.
Yeah, but still, they were there specifically, like, as scientists to study humans. So I'm surprised they actually know this little.
But when no one else but the captain and the first officer knew was they were on a mission, maybe we should wipe them out and claim this planet.
Should we? Do you think maybe? Anyway. They walk up to a building and they peek in the windows and they figure out that it's clearly a bar. They figure out there's food in there. And Mistral wants to go in, but Tamir kind of holds him back and makes him promise that he won't speak. 2 Vulcans walk into a bar.
And the bartender says, "Where'd you get that weird thing?" And the Vulcan says, "Risa."
Why the long ears?
We got a drink named after you. Really? You got a drink named to Paul?
Anyway, it's sort of your traditional 1950s small town bar. Bunch of tables, a big pool table in the middle, honky-tonk music is playing.
Racism in the air.
Yeah.
Patriarchy everywhere you look. Yeah, sure.
When they walk in, literally everyone stops and stares at them. And then they kind of awkwardly walk to the bar. And everyone more or less goes about their business. Like, all right. Like, it's like you keep expecting them to be like, y'all not from around here. And that doesn't happen. It's weird. So as they're walking up to the bar, one of the patrons is closing out his tab with the bartender lady. And Tamir and Mistral watch as he pays her, and they realize that they're going to need currency to get any food or drinks.
Again, they've been studying humans and they don't realize that humans use money.
The sense I got is they're studying like their science more than their culture. Right. So
Oh, that makes sense. They're like not there to be anthropologists. They're there to like see where they are scientifically.
They're also studying Sputnik, so maybe they're studying Russia.
Yeah, really. That would be amazing. Look at it this way, Jamie. If I sent you to a planet that's inhabited and said, okay, do an analysis of this, 2 weeks later, would you know what kind of currency they have? It's like...
Not what kind, but that they have currency at all.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And how currency works and all of that. How the financial system works.
They bring out Vulcan money. Oh, I love that when people try to pay with fake future money.
When the bartender gives the guy back his change, he takes his change and he puts it into a big jar on the bar, and she thanks him. Then she walks over and asks the Vulcans what she can get for them. And Tamir asks if there's anything that does not require currency. And the bartender, grabs a bowl of pretzels from the bar and hands it to him.
I was just going to say like some peanuts or something.
Yeah. And they're sort of looking at the pretzels, and Mistral is considering eating one. And as they're doing that, the guy at the bar, whose name is Billy, asks them what brings them to town. Tamir tells them that she says their vehicle had an accident outside of town. And the bartender, who's now coming back to actually give them water, which is very nice, asks if they're okay. And she also asks if they're married. And Tamir says they're not, they're business associates.
Nothing suspicious here.
Everything is fine.
This is my business associate.
I'm sorry, I have no currency.
That's correct.
Totally a thing that people said in 1950s rural Pennsylvania.
I mean, they're so quick to pull the trigger on communism, and these two come in and they're like, very out of place. These are communists.
So I have a question. I know they stole clothes and they're in rural Pennsylvania. Like, are they high status, low status? Do they look like they just belong? Like...
No, they look like they belong. They're like in farm.
Okay.
She's like in a long farm kind of plaid dress, and
somebody's gonna shout later on, "Hey, that's Jimmy's shirt."
Yeah, something like that's what you feel like.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing if he was wearing like a trucker
not ever
shirt.
Happen?
If they had a trucker shirt that had the name over the.
That's true. And they're speculating. They're like, this would appear to be some sort of inscription. Oh well, carry on.
That would be God. This will never happen, but I really hope that like. Later in Enterprise, they do an episode where they go back to the 90s and like Trip has a pair of sweatpants that say juicy across the end.
This is the style, Captain.
It is. I've read about this historical period.
That's right.
We talked about how they never get anything. Like, there's always like little jokes, but they never get anything culturally wrong. Like the white guys in Next Generation never show up on Earth and like wearing a dashiki and a Kofi hat. They never get it completely wrong. It's just slightly
That's
off.
right.
So Billy, the guy at the bar, offers to give them a lift to the gas station up the road, but they decline. He shrugs and wanders off, and then kind of asks the bar in general if anybody is up for playing a round of pool, a quarter a ball.
Here we go. Geometry.
And there's a young man walking in with an armful of books who says he'll play.
Does he look like Trip?
Nope. Oh my God.
That would be so amazing. I was really hoping.
Trip's great grandfather.
So hoping that everybody, including weirdly like Hoshi's great grandmother,
working on the railroad.
Oh, Phlox is the mayor.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Billy tells the kid that he needs to ask his mother, who happens to be the bartender lady. The kid's name is Jack, so he asks
actually a
his
kid. Okay.
Then he's like a teenager. He's like a older teenager, right?
Okay.
The kid's name is Jack. He asks his mom, whose name is Maggie, if he can play, saying they could use the cash, but Maggie tells him he has to go upstairs and do his homework. And the kid shrugs and leaves. He's pretty chill about it. I mean, like I said, I say his kid, but he's like a senior in high school. He's a grown teenager.
Right.
Mistral suddenly speaks up. He says, in spite of promising that he wasn't going to, he speaks up and says he is up for a game, and Tamir tries to stop him, but he is confident that he can defeat the guy. Tamir rightfully says that he doesn't even know the rules, but Mistral insists that it's simple. He walks over to Billy, who tells him that he can't play without any money.
Yeah, didn't they say it was 25 cents a ball?
It was a quarter a ball. And so they're disappointed. They make to leave, but Billy stops them. He says he'll make them a deal. If Mistral wins, Billy will pay up. If Billy wins, Tamir will have a drink with him. And Mistral's like, yep, no problem.
I'm going to say this 50s Pennsylvania miner is being a lot more gallant than the men of the 22nd century.
Yeah.
That's true, because he's not saying, like, give her to me. Like
grab her. It's like, hey, have a drink with her.
Yeah.
A quarter,
That's kind of respectful.
A quarter versus I will buy you a drink.
Tamir pulls him aside. She's annoyed, and they sidebar. Mistral says the game is based on simple geometry, which would not challenge a Vulcan child. Tamir is really concerned that if he loses, she's going to have to socialize with Billy. Like, this is her biggest concern in all of this.
Okay, little question, or a little point here. They did not have the very handy inflation calculator at the time that they wrote this episode, because a quarter...
You could buy a car with that.
It's $2.73 equivalent.
Oh, that is a pricey game.
I just want to bring that up.
Yeah,
I love
that's a good point.
when older TV shows cite these figures. Obviously, watching Mad Men, it's indispensable. You just anytime they say a dollar figure.
I would like to point this out. I was very smart as a child. Knowing geometry does not make you automatically good at playing pool.
Yeah.
I know this from experience.
This is a good
Well, Vulcans also are like twice as strong as humans. I don't know. It's Vulcans. Yeah.
How great would it be if he starts playing pool and immediately rips the felt off them, like just goes straight through?
Well, I hope that's about what's about to happen here. So, because it would be nice if Tamir winds up being the one who has to actually get them out of the jeopardy that they find them.
Well, Mistral reminds Tamir that they need the currency, and it's better to socialize than to die of starvation. She does not look convinced. She's like, let me think about it for a minute, you know?
That's what Vulcans do when they're like, that is logical, but I do not like it.
But Mistral agrees to the terms, and they start to play. Billy starts, and as it turns out, he's a fucking shark, y'all. He just keeps sinking balls. And for a minute, it seems like Mistral isn't even going to get a chance to play. But eventually, Billy does miss, and Tamir looks extremely relieved. And now it's Mistral's turn. And he, of course, does great. He clears all the balls and then calls and sinks the 8-ball. Which, and I am doing a new thing this week, I am plugging the never asked, never answered into the moment that it happens, which is, this is our never asked, never answered for the episode. How the fuck did he know the rules of pool?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that.
He did not even watch a game. They walked in, he glanced over at the pool table, and I'm not even sure people were playing when he glanced over. He was in the bar for maybe 5 minutes, and now geometry will not make you understand the rules of the game.
Yeah, I thought, like, when you were saying this, I was like, oh, he probably, like, watched some players play a game or something.
Nope.
Okay, My thought on this is, do you remember in Star Trek '09, we see the little learning pods that all the kids are in, and they're basically learning calculus and quantum whatever.
Yep.
They have an idea of things. So he's looking at a game that he approaches as like, this is pretty primitive. How primitive could this be? There's striped balls, there's solid balls. Each one are numbered. Once he knows it's an adversarial thing, I think his brain can differentiate solid, striped, and then the numbers. I don't feel like that's like too nerdy of headcanon, but
No.
if no one plays a game before he plays it, that's just like lazy writing or poor directing.
Sinking the 8-ball
Right,
seems
no.
like not something you could logically figure out.
No.
That
One,
is a-
one, it's stupid, and it's just there because we, as the audience, know this. Two, if I'm going to justify this, that is the one piece of information they got from Earth before they crashed.
Well, yes, yeah. Someone was watching like
They
broadcast
have
TV.
satellites, and these are the rules of pull. Well, this is never going to be
just-
useful to us.
They're just lucky they didn't catch a British, like a billiards game, which was the same but
true.
slightly different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Either way, they win. They make some
Yay.
cash, which they use to buy groceries. As I said earlier, in general, Mistral just seems to intuitively know a lot about the humans. He's clearly fascinated by them.
God, I wish he was played by Trip. Connor Trenier in pointy ears and a severe haircut.
It would be fun if they had done that, if they'd used the same actor.
Yeah, I feel like they could have, because it's like it's not an actual flashback. She's telling a story.
Yeah, so you
So
put yourself into it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That would
they
be
could
great
have
because
done
then you
that.
could do counterpoints. Like Connor Trenier could be either the most lax Vulcan or the most severe Vulcan, and that would be a funny counterpoint to
Also, that would explain why Tamir looks exactly like T'Pol. It's because then you're like, okay, well, this is not actually. We're not
Right.
seeing the actual thing that's happening.
Tamir is still quite snippy about the fact that Mistral disobeyed orders and was so chatty with everyone. But it's time to go back to the Enterprise and back to the dinner table, where the guys remain super skeptical. They have lots of questions, and T'Pol says, well, if they don't want to hear the rest, she can leave. But of course, they stop her and tell her to continue. So she explains that as the Vulcans remained stranded, they obviously couldn't rely on gambling for income. Although how great would it have been if they just like became the mob of that little town?
No. Better they go to Vegas, bright light city, gonna save my soul.
Would have been so good. All right. So they took whatever employment they could while they waited to see if, their distress call ever made it out. So we see Tamir sweeping the floor in the bar, Vulcan 3 under a sink trying to fix a pipe with a wrench. That's actually kind of a fun scene because he's having trouble with the wrench, like getting it to turn. So he kind of looks around to make sure nobody's watching and then grabs some sort of Vulcan device from his bag and uses it instead.
Excellent.
And Mistral gets a job in the mine. T'Pol explains that as the weeks went on and they still had no news from the Vulcan High Command, it became more and more difficult for them to avoid interacting with the humans.
It's funny to me that because their story was that the vehicle broke down. I love the idea that the people in this town believe that their car broke down, and so now they just
now
have
they
to
live
live here
there.
for the rest of their lives.
I don't know, maybe in the 50s that's how it worked.
That's not
Like-
a ridiculous supposition that in,
Right.
the 1950s, like there wasn't, like, what did you have? You had Greyhound and cars and some sort of rail travel. But yeah, that's how
So if
some
you had no
people
money-
end up. If you are poor and you end up at town, guess what? That's where you live.
Yeah, fair.
So there's a scene where Mistral is hanging out at the bar, where Maggie, the bartender, is watching a news report about a nuclear test. And Mistral asks if it concerns her, and she says, yes, it scares the hell out of her. And Mistral says he would hate to see humanity destroy itself, and she agrees.
Nothing weird about that statement.
I would hate to see humanity destroy itself. It's totally a normal thing that people say.
You're right, fellow citizen.
Yeah,
That is an
exactly.
excellent point.
Saying humanity destroy itself is fine. I would hate to see you humans destroy
Yeah,
yourselves.
exactly. Yeah.
That's the weird part.
So they're still at the bar. Mistral and Maggie are chatting about, nuclear annihilation. And Jack walks up and asks Mistral if he wants to play some 8-ball. He tries to convince his mom that it's good practice for his geometry midterms.
Mhm.
But she says that there are better ways to study math. Mistral asks Jack if he's interested in math, and Jack says he's hoping to study it in college. Tamir, who is kind of in the background cleaning a table, sort of looks up, and she's clearly listening to them. Jack says he wants to study mechanical engineering at college if he gets to go. His mother says he will. She very proudly tells Mistral that he got a scholarship, but Jack explains that it's only a partial scholarship. And Maggie says that everyone is chipping in to help to pay for his other expenses, and that's what the jar on the bar is for.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
It's a nice little small town. Everybody knows everybody, and they're all trying to help.
That's a nice touch. I'm back in now. I kind of want to watch this.
So we cut to a small house that the Vulcans are apparently living in. Maybe it's an apartment, hard to tell. Mistral is watching a black and white TV. There's a cowboy show on. Tamir is sitting on a chair next to him, apparently reading 2 books at once.
so there are three Vulcans.
There are 3 Vulcans.
Okay.
But the lease only allows them to have 2 Vulcans. So
They have to pay an extra
One of them-
deposit.
keep it a
He is
secret.
no. One of them is dressed as a cat. He has his ears out. It's like, no, he's a pet.
There's a knock on the door. Ah, it's Mr. Roper. Ah.
Yeah, I grant you he's over 20 pounds, but just slightly, so he's okay. Why do I have to shit in a box? Shut up, Jarek. You just need to.
So Vulcan 3 walks in carrying a plunger. He looks annoyed and says it's the third time this week he's had to fix Mrs. Garrett's sink. And that line is what made Stephen insist that this was canon with the facts of life.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Oh,
That's where I
wow.
went, exactly.
And I was like, Bill is going to 100% agree with you, and Jamie is not going to have a clue what we're talking about.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't understand. Joe stole the bakery truck to go to a bar. It is not logical.
God, I would watch that show. All right.
This is the
That
prequel
is-
to that
it's
too.
But it's too long for us to explain, Jamie. It's fine.
Can you imagine though being plunging human filth and you're a Vulcan?
Well, he's not.
It's torture for a Vulcan. Their smell, remember?
That's a
yeah,
Paul
there
was
is
very
that
big
smell.
on that. Which is why Archer just pouring her a bunch of wine. I'm like, she doesn't want to smell your smells, bro.
No, it's-
like, haven't you learned that yet?
My favorite does not give a fuck time travel situation is definitely Star Trek The Voyage Home, where Bones is just giving out medicine that regrows kidneys. Like, he doesn't,
give a
care.
shit.
So I just really want, like, Carbon Creek to have, like, the most amazing plumbing system in the world. It's like, I don't even understand how this works.
I do want to point out, Bill, you keep calling it a time travel situation, but there is not
There's no
actually
time
any
travel.
time travel
Okay,
involved
fair
here.
enough. Time shift, okay.
But it feels like it because they have like
Right. it's
future type, like
Yeah.
human future technology.
They have technology that the humans wouldn't. Anyway. Vulcan 3 is bitching about Mrs. Garrett's sink. Mistral suggests that perhaps she enjoys his company.
Yeah.
Plunging. No, wink, wink.
Does he have a little Vulcan butt crack when he's, like, bending over?
Nope, not as far as I can tell. Vulcan 3 says it wouldn't be so bad, but Mrs. Garrett's son keeps calling him Mo because the way his hair is cut, he looks like the Stooge.
Yes, he does.
Tamir doesn't get it, but Mistral says yes, the hair is quite similar. Anyway, Vulcan 3 complained that
Just call him Mo. It's better than calling him
better,
Vulcan
right?
3.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to call him Mo. Complains that he's a warp field engineer being reduced to doing this. And Tamir says that he should use those skills to try to help her build a subspace transceiver. But he insists that's impossible.
Mrs. Garrett?
2D is in the Bajoran system.
Welcome to our new show, The Facts of Warp.
Jamie, I know you don't know what we're talking about, but trust me when I say it's hilarious.
You don't want to know.
You don't want to know, but it's
You literally
hilarious.
don't want to.
Okay.
I love Maria. You didn't even ask me if I was familiar. You're just like Jamie's.
No,
not
I
gonna
knew
know
you
this.
did. There's no way you know about the facts of life. I mean, the show, The Facts of Life.
I know about it. I know it existed.
Jamie, it's not an insult. It's a sign of respect. I know you don't know what I'm talking about.
Anyway.
All right, so they're okay. So they're trying to come up with a plan.
Yeah, but Mo says it's really impossible to build a subspace transceiver. But Tamir says that if they remain there, they'll die. She says this world is on the brink of self-annihilation, but Mistral says he does not believe that. Tamir says that his fascination with humans is blinding him and he spends too much time watching TV. Mistral says he's doing research, which, damn, I wish I had thought of when I was 8 years old.
That would be great if you said that to your parents. I'm doing research on your human culture. Be gone, human.
Tamir says that humans are a violent race who devote most of their time to finding ways to kill each other. And Mistral says that the Vulcans were also violent centuries ago. He says that humans just haven't reached their potential, that they have great empathy and compassion, as demonstrated by how they've been made to feel welcome in Carbon Creek. And Tamir replies, it's only because they think they're human. She says if they were discovered as Vulcans, the humans would not be as compassionate. And she's not wrong.
She's so right.
Well, it's also because they're super hot.
Yeah, that too.
You're like, you know what the problem is? I can't take how hot you are. So I'm going to blame it on the air.
That's why Roswell was covered up. The aliens were too hot to release too.
That was, I think, the premise of the show on the WB.
Kind of, yeah. That was, yeah.
So Mistral, like us, cannot disagree. So he just gets up to leave. He says he's going back to the ship to get a part to enhance the TV antenna. Tamir tries to tell him to wait until dark, but he insists he has to go right then because I Love Lucy is on that night.
So he's dead.
Tamir looks suspicious.
I bet that was used in the promo.
Yeah.
That's my guess. Yeah. They're like, this week, the Vulcans, or T'Pol goes time. Oh, I Love Lucy's on tonight. What'll happen next on
That's
Enterprise?
Great, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's almost certainly how that works.
Oh, boy.
All right. So we see Mistral walking down the street, and then he stops, and he waits, and a car drives up, and it's Maggie. And he gets into her car, and they drive off, leaving Tamir, who has followed him, watching them, very annoyed. And we go into commercial.
Okay, wait. I forgot. So one of them has been wearing a beanie.
That's Mistral.
And then Tamir is just using her hair. What is Mo doing?
He's also using his hair because he has a Mo haircut. So his hair is like very, like it's quite long and covers. Yeah.
He has a bob.
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. But yeah,
just feel like the hair thing it's for like I feel like if we're just walking into a bar, not that big a deal, but if you're like living there, I don't know, I just feel like that wouldn't be a good disguise.
So the dude and Maggie are having an assignation.
They are. So when we come back, Maggie is dropping Mistral off, and they're in the car.
He looks really messed up.
Yeah, he's all bowlegged and woozy. Yeah. Dehydrated.
He's got like bandages on his face.
This research has gone awry.
Yes.
His mascara is
little
running.
Birds are floating and running around his head. Yeah.
He is talking about how different it is to see it in person versus on the TV. They went to a baseball game.
Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I
clarification.
felt like I needed to clarify. So
we were still right. He did round third base. Yeah.
So she says there's another game next week if he's interested, or they could go to a movie. Mistral says he'd like that. And after a minute, she asks if she can ask him a question. And she asks what he's hiding under his beanie, if it's a pointed head. She says, "You're not from Mars, are you?" And he looks taken aback, and she immediately apologizes for making fun of him.
Does she say it in a flirty way? Does it seem like she's trying to flirt
just
with him?
a funny, haha, flirty kind of a way. And he was a little taken aback by it all. But he says he's not offended, and he asks her a question. What happened to your mate? These guys are
nice.
So bad at human interaction. But she says her husband left a long time ago, that her son Jack used to get letters now and then, but they haven't heard from him in a really long time. She said she had hoped that the husband would be able to help with Jack's college, but he's clearly not interested. And she gets really upset talking about it. And then she apologizes for getting upset. She says it's not always easy to keep a lid on her emotions. And he says, yes, I understand.
This is one of the most offensive moments for a Vulcan to sit there. someone
So
expressing
true.
a stream of emotion. It's just like she's just calling him slurs. It's the equivalent.
I'm sorry. Do we know what this guy's job was on the ship? Is he like an anthropologist? Is this like interesting? Because that would explain why he's like, yeah, I'm cool with this.
Yeah, he just sounds like Lieutenant Dickhead right now.
I'm saying he's actually being empathetic. Like he's engaging with the culture.
So that made
his role on the ship.
Yeah, so that I don't know if that's a role, but that's definitely the vibe you get. Like he is just he's interested in the humans. He wants to understand the culture. He wants to get into it. Yeah. So
an empathetic Vulcan, amazing,
right?
Yeah.
So they have this awkward pause in the car, and after a minute, she leans over and she kisses him, and he looks again taken aback, and she is mortified. She apologizes, and he said, "No, you just took me by surprise, but that it was very pleasant."
In his defense, this is the early 60s. That's super emotionally open for a man in the 60s in rural America.
But she's all like, pleasant. And he asks if that was not an appropriate response. Like, how do these people not know they're aliens? He asks if it was not an appropriate response, and she says she knows it's been a while since she kissed a guy, but she was hoping it would be better than pleasant. And he says, well, I did say very pleasant. But it's fine. They laugh. And then she looks out the window and says, we've got company. And we see Tamir standing on the sidewalk, hands at her side, just fucking staring at them like a creepy Victorian child ghost. Like,
curfew is 9 o'clock, not 9:02, not 9:05.
Fucking weird. Also,
get indoors.
How long have
right
you been
now.
on that sidewalk? Did you wait the whole time?
Lurk and listen. My goodness.
I'm sure they don't deal with this at all, but it's got to be weird for this small Pennsylvania community for a woman and two men to be living together, unless they established like they're sisters and brothers, but maybe
never asked, never answered.
Okay.
I think
fair
the
enough.
only relationship that they've ever said is we are business colleagues or whatever. So Mistral gets up, he goes out to talk to Tamir, who gives him a lot of shit. He explains that he went to a baseball game because Maggie invited him. He said that he didn't think it would be a problem, but Tamir says that if that's the case, why lie about it? And he says it's because he knew she wouldn't understand. And he starts to walk away, but Tamir says, you were engaging in intimate activity in that way. Like she literally says it like intimate activity. It's the prissiest thing you could imagine.
Oh, that's
Sister Tamir. Oh my goodness, it's a Catholic school.
That's why this guy needs to be played by Connor Grenier. That would be frickin' amazing.
This is why this should be the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
This is so much fun. This sounds so fun. Could we just get a whole show of these three, like, Vulcans trying to live on Earth?
Star Trek Carbon Creek.
Yeah. Would watch that show. Mistral said he did not initiate it, and he again tries to leave, but Tamir stops him and tells him he is to have no more contact with that woman.
That woman.
She says that she is still in command, and Mistral is like, of what?
I mean, fair.
He tells her that she needs to come to terms with the fact that they may never leave Earth. And then he does walk away, and, you know, Tamir looks mildly annoyed, which, as we know from DePaul, means she's pissed. So the next scene is actually in the restaurant. Tamir, who's working there, is cleaning up, and she is going through and she's blowing out all the candles on the table, and she goes to blow out a candle, and then she thinks better of it, and she sits down and she pulls it towards her, closing her eyes. Like, she's clear she's going to meditate.
And then a green mist flows into the candle.
No, there is no candle fucking in this episode.
The second you said candle, I was like...
Jamie was right there with me. As soon as you say candle.
Canonically, he is on Earth at that time.
You cannot say candle. That just activates.
I know.
Again, and I know that I told this story that I knew about the episode, didn't know when it was coming. But because of that, I am trained. When I watch Star Trek and I see a candle, I'm immediately like, who is going to fuck that candle?
before she can start to meditate, she realizes that there's somebody standing in front of her, and it's Jack, the kid, who apologizes for bothering her and asks what she's doing. And she tells him that she was going to meditate. And he asks if she's trying to clear her mind or reach a higher spiritual plane. And she looks up, surprised that he knows so much about meditation. And he says he spends a lot of time at the library reading. He says he reads about places he'd like to visit, like Tibet, where the Buddhist monks meditate every day, or India, where some of the fakirs can slow their heart rate, tell them to stop. He says he reads everything he can, astronomy, literature, whatever. And he asks her what she likes to read, and she says she has an interest in astronomy as well. And he says, he gets all excited, and he says, did you know that just minutes after dark, when the sun is just right, you can see Sputnik with the naked eye? And he offers to show her, but she says she's already seen it. She knows about this.
Ooh, burn.
He gets the hint, and he tells her it was nice talking to her, and he'll let her get back to her meditation. And Tamir says it was nice talking to him, and seems surprised that she's actually telling the truth. Like, she actually enjoyed that interaction.
I'm sorry, the men in this episode are so much better than the men in the Enterprise.
The men in this episode are so great. They're lovely human beings, everyone.
I was just gonna say, I was like, wait, that's it? That sounds like a very nice scene.
And at the end,
You didn't make a pass at her? Yeah.
we cut back to Paul. Was like, what the fuck is wrong with all of you?
Trip's like, wait, that's it? That's all he had to say? Well, it just seems, and then Archer's like, what is it, Trip? And then I'll be like, it just seems to me, Captain, you got a young Vulcan woman. I'm sure if she's a descendant of DePaul, that it'll all look good. And she's like, that is a logical deduction. And Archer's like, are you saying the kid should have made a pass? And I would have. And then we'd be like, wacka wacka, isn't this great Star Trek? Wah, wah, wah. That's my memory of Enterprise at this point. We are men doing manly things.
You're not at all
Making
wrong.
fools of ourselves.
That basically sums it up.
But cut to the mines, guys. We're going in the mines.
Uh-oh.
Billy walks up to Mistral and invites him to a ball game at the weekend. And Mistral says he can't. And Billy asks him what's up with him. He says he hasn't been doing anything with them lately. And he starts to kind of ask what's going on, but they're interrupted by an explosion in the mine. They're fine, but there is shouting, there's an alarm blaring, the miners are running around. And then we cut to the destroyed Vulcan ship, where Mistral is just searching through the debris. Tamir and Mo walk in and ask why he asked them to meet them there, and he asks them to help him find a particle replicator. He explains that at least 20 men are trapped in the mine after the accident, and it could take the humans days to free them. Tamir says they can't intervene. Mo is worried that someone will see the weapon. Mistral says these people will die, and Tamir says that humans only live 60 or 70 years, and is it really worth the risk to just extend their lives by a few years? Like, it's cold, y'all. It's cold.
She has a point.
But it's cold. Mo says they can't risk contaminating the humans' culture, and Mistral says it has nothing to do with contamination. It has to do with compassion. And Tamir steps back, clearly surprised, and says, compassion is an emotion. And for the first time, it actually is an emotion that they're talking about.
The first time they said X is an emotion, and it was an emotion. Amazing.
Wait, what's the most absurd of those that comes to mind?
I've made so
Heroes?
many jokes.
Emotion.
Everything.
Having
Loyalty
Loyalty
is
is
an
an
emotion.
loyalty.
Yeah, there were several.
And I believe
Trip's like, well, carburetors are an
Hearing
emotion.
I've made so many dumb jokes about this, I can't even remember, but I do believe that in the two-parter at the beginning of the series, Trip might actually say, but then loyalty is an emotion, isn't it? Yeah.
Both the other Vulcans look at Mistral like he has a disease. Mistral says they're his friends and he's going to help them and that they shouldn't try to stop him. Mo just leaves and Tamir just kind of looks at him. And then we go back to the caves. Miners are running around. They're caves, you guys!
I knew it.
all Maria episodes have to have a cave. It's apparently the law.
Bill and I have never had a cave. Every cave has been a Maria
been
episode.
I had cocaine cave. I had all the caves. So many fucking caves.
You had Terra Nova.
I had Terra Nova.
That was a planet of caves.
I just want one episode that isn't a cave. Is that so much to ask? Apparently, yes.
Hey, you did get a whole desert episode.
It would be amazing if you did the Phlox, the day in the life of Phlox episode, and suddenly there's a cave in the middle of a space.
And like it will just start with him catching a bat in a cave, and then Trip's like, bats are an emotion.
You are right, Jamie. I did have fucking Desert Crossing, which didn't have a cave, but had the goddamn desert. Anyway, so Mistral walks into the cave and he starts to make his way down a tunnel where nobody else is, and he comes to a big cavern. And as he's walking, he gets a comm. It's Tamir on the outside with a scanner. She is helping him. She's giving him directions on where to go. And she leads him to an abandoned shaft where he crawls in and he ends up in another cavern, and she tells him to find a strata of quartz on the wall and uses his phaser, or I guess this particle replicator thing, in a very specific way. He basically tunnels through that space, and he continues to do, she sort of tells him, okay, you got to keep going, you got to wait, and the thing kind of sparks and fits, but he actually makes the hole. And then she says, go 30 meters in, and he finds all the trapped miners there and starts to help them get out. Back to dinner. T'Pol explains that Mistral saved 12 miners and became a local hero, which means 8 miners died, apparently. But nobody mentions that. Like, it's a weird thing.
Still the majority.
Yeah, still the majority. It was just a weird choice. Like, we're gonna say there were 20 men trapped, but only saved 12. It just seems weird.
Great. Firefighter lets 12 people die.
No, 8. Only 8
What?
people died.
No, the point is the people he saved.
I know.
That he could have
I'm
let
just saying,
die.
like, if you're...
I mean, it's likely that when they got stuck,
Those people were
8
dead
people died
to
at
begin.
that time. But I like imagining that he was like saving them, and he's like, "Sorry guys, I like only got time for 12 of
Y'all
you."
are done.
I can carry 2 on each arm, 2 on each leg, 1 on the back, 1 on the front.
And also, I really just don't like you guys. You guys have been kind of dicks, so...
Or was he one of the 12? Like, they just counted him as one of them? And then does the Vulcan High Command get this report and they're like, only a 60% success rates? We will consider this in your next performance review.
So Mistral saved 12 miners. He became a local hero. T'Pol says she's sure that people wondered how he did it, but nobody ever discovered what actually happened. And 3 more months went by. The trio had basically resigned themselves to the fact that they would never leave Earth.
So how long has it been total that they've been there?
Yeah,
6 months.
I think it's like half a year,
Okay.
maybe.
Once you do that, though, he's bound to that community. He saved a bunch of miners in a mining town. He can't just leave.
Right.
Like, you can't just like, see you later. My ship has come in.
Our car got fixed. I'm off to Pittsburgh.
So back in the living room of the Vulcan apartment, Mistral is still watching TV. Tamir is reading, but just one book this time. And Mo is working on something. He's got a soldering iron at the kitchen table and he's trying to fix something. And they hear a beep and they rush to pull a small device from a drawer and respond. It's the Vulcans come to rescue them. Their message was received by a Tellarite freighter, so it took a while to actually work its way through to Vulcan High Command.
Oh, it's Hitchhiker's Guide.
The Vulcan captain tells them they're on their way and that they should meet them at the crash site in 3 days. Tamir and Mo look super excited. Mistral looks kind of bummed.
Yeah.
So, cut to daytime. Tamir is in the parking lot of the restaurant sweeping? I'm not sure why she was sweeping the parking lot, but I was like, maybe this is a 1950s thing?
No.
I don't know. I didn't grow up in this country. Is that a thing?
It's the getting things just a little
She's
off.
well,
She's like
yeah.
the brooming, you
So
broom the
weak.
floor
Big bit, yeah.
outdoors. Yeah.
There's the residue. You've put lead in your petroleum products. I don't know why. I'm removing this. It's going to decrease your health risk for children by 2%, 2.3%.
I love it. You know what, that works either
Yeah.
way, because she could be like, these savages will just brush the dust around, so who gives a shit? Or
It's just
she's
something
like,
that you see.
I'm gonna try to help them out, these weirdos. It works either way.
So Jack drives up. He gets out and asks about them leaving. He said he hears they're leaving, and she says they're going home up north. And he says that he will miss them because they're the most interesting people he's met in this town. And she says that she's sure he'll find lots of interesting people in college. But he says he isn't going to college after all.
Oh no!
He's going to Vietnam. Oh no, Korea.
Korea. But they couldn't come up with the rest of the money, and the deadline for the tuition is Friday. And Tamir is clearly like surprised and quite upset by this. You know, I gotta take a minute. Like, Jolene Blaylock does so much with just like a purse of her lips or like a widening of her eyes.
Yeah.
Like, her face barely changes, but you can tell like she is taken aback and upset by this news.
So she gives him 3 gold bars.
And as they're talking, Maggie, his mom, like comes out of the bar but sees them talking and then kind of backs up so that he doesn't see, and she's just listening. And they're talking about, well, will you have another, like, will you be able to reapply? And he's like, yes, but there's no guarantees. But he leaves, and Maggie comes out and she talks to Tamir and says she's so mad because he got the highest score of anyone in the county on the college boards, and it just isn't fair that he can't go. And Tamir doesn't say anything. But in the next scene, we see her back at the ship, kind of rooting around in the debris. And she digs around and she finds this small black pouch and she takes it. And then we get a travel montage. She's on a train, and then she's walking into a city, and she's walking around looking for an address. And she walks into a building and up to the desk of a man who kind of looks like a slightly sweaty used car salesman in a bad suit. And he says, so you're the lady who has the invention that's going to change the world. Tamir doesn't say anything. She just pulls out the pouch and she opens it. And then she closes it again. And then she opens it. The seal is Velcro, and she opens and closes it a few more times to show the guy. And he's kind of confused at first, but then he takes it and he opens it and he closes it and then he opens it and he looks very excited. And then we see Tamir leaving the building, shoving this fistful of cash into her purse.
They didn't give her a sack with a dollar sign.
Almost.
Oh, that would be amazing.
So the next morning, Maggie walks into the bar and she's kind of starting her day, and she says good morning to Tamir, who's already there kind of cleaning up or getting ready or whatever. And she glances over to the jar and realizes it is full of cash. And so she yells for Jack and she's thrilled. And Tamir looks on with like this little smile on her face. And then we're back to the Vulcan's apartment. Mistral is sweeping the floor. Tamir is doing the dishes, and Mo is still working on something at the kitchen table. Tamir asks him why he's working on something when he already quit his job. And he says he promised Mrs. Garrett that he would fix this suction device, it's a vacuum cleaner he's helping with.
Oh, thank God for clarifying.
And so now my canon is that they were definitely fucking this whole time.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yeah. You should start a home for young girls. It's his idea.
It would be amazing. Mistral says it's unfortunate that Mo will be leaving these people without experiencing one thing they have to offer. And Mo kind of scoffs and says, such as what? Alcohol, frozen fish sticks, and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. Mistral says there's much more to see, but Mo says he has seen enough. Mistral says he is not. He is planning on staying on Earth.
Yeah, he is.
And he becomes Trip Tucker's grandpa.
I'm going to change my name to Nimoy.
There we go.
The others are shocked, but Mistral says that humanity is on the verge of huge technological and social advancement. And this is a unique opportunity to study an emerging species. He says there's still much more to learn about these people. And Tamir says, all of them or just one? Like, she's still snippy about
Steady till the
yeah.
end. Yeah. She is definitely T'Pol's grandmother.
And then she starts making the slapping
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah. She does the Liz
The
Lemon.
Liz
sex.
Lemon is that's
Hands, yes.
is that sex?
Is that
is
sex
the way
or
I
women?
do it.
However, Mistral says that while Maggie has helped him learn about their culture, it has nothing to do with her. He actually doesn't plan to stay in Carbon Creek. He wants to see the world. Mo says the High Command will never allow it and tells Tamir to back him up on this, but Tamir is clearly conflicted. She offers to get Mistral on the next survey ship, but that's not enough. The next survey would be in another 20 years, and it would all be running scans in high orbit. Again, Tamir doesn't really reply. She just looks at him.
Oh, spin-off episode. Backdoor pilot.
We then see the Vulcan ship landing. Mo and Tamir, back in uniform, are walking into a clearing where they meet the Vulcan captain of the rescue ship. He asks where their captain is, and Tamir says that the captain was killed in the crash. And then he asks about the fourth member of their team, and Tamir says he was also killed, and that they cremated their remains. Mo kind of looks at her, but doesn't say anything. And they walk towards the rescue ship. Tamir kind of pauses and looks around for a minute and then follows, and the ship takes off.
I just feel like it doesn't work. Like, it's one thing to say that one little lie, but presumably when they get back, they have to, like, write a whole report of everything they've been up to on the planet.
Mm.
And they're gonna somehow leave him out of the whole thing.
Yeah, and
I mean, I guess.
How did
I-
T'Pol...
I love a lying
How
Vulcan.
did T'Pol know about it? If it wasn't... I mean, maybe it's like lore in the family.
Passed down,
Yeah.
Back on the Enterprise, Trip's mind is fucking blown that his history books were
Fucking
all wrong.
My boy. Love my boy.
History is an emotion, Trip.
Archer wants to know how long Mistral stayed on Earth, and T'Pol says presumably the rest of his life, which could be 100 to 150 years. Trip wants to know how it's possible that an alien lives on Earth for 150 years and nobody noticed, and also what happened when he died, what happened to his body.
I love the idea that he just wore his beanie
The whole
for
time,
rest
for
of his life.
150
Oh,
years, that man
fantastic.
wore his beanie.
So then does the episode ending going like, oh, he died in the nuclear holocaust. And then freeze frame as they toast. Yeah.
Khan Noonien Sung personally tortured him.
T'Pol says, you asked me to tell you a story. And Trip says, it was a good one, but did it really happen? As I said, you asked me to tell you a story. So Trip thinks she put one over on them. But Archer says, but wait, you actually did go to Carbon Creek. And T'Pol says that if he checked the record more closely, he would see that she also went to Yellowstone and the Carlsbad Cavern, that she's a scientist and is interested in geology.
And a jazz club.
So she gets up, she thanks them for the meal, and she leaves. And the guys kind of grin at each other like, maybe. They're still not quite sure if it's real or not.
Archer's like, that's the longest I've ever heard a woman speak before. Without
gonna make
shouting her
that
down.
You're so right. That's never happened to me before. So the final scene is in T'Pol's quarters. She's in her PJs and a crop top.
Nipples alert. Nipples condition green.
Right.
They're actually very cute PJs that she's in.
Okay.
She pulls something out of a drawer, and it's wrapped in a cloth, and then she...
Oh, drawer, not drawers. Okay.
And she gets down, she puts it on the ground, and she, like, opens the cloth, flips back the black cloth, and it's a small purse, like a 1950s clutch with a little handle, which is, it's the
I
same
love
thing that we
that.
saw Tamir shoveling the money into, and she kind of picks it up very gently and looks at it, and end of episode.
Yay.
Nice.
How
Wow.
Y'all!
That sounds so good.
That sounds good.
Like, this was a super fun episode.
Wow.
Like, it is trad Star Trek. Like,
She had to go. The Vulcans had to go back to 1950s America to find
guys that weren't shitty. Yeah.
It does, when the show is at its best, it's always when it's not our main characters, not on the Enterprise.
Whenever they change the concept to not Enterprise.
So I had heard a little bit about this episode, mainly that it was considered one of the best episodes of Enterprise. And
Sounds
obviously
great.
there was that reference to it on Lower Deck. So I knew kind of that it had to do with going back to a less civilized culture. I just assumed it was the actual crew who went back in time. I am not sure what it says that the best story that I've seen yet has zero involvement by any character we've seen before.
And pretty importantly, it features Jolene in the show, as opposed to number one on the call sheet, Scott Bakula, and number one in the writer's hearts, Trip Checker.
Here's a fun fact. Mistral's character was named after George de Mistral, the inventor of Velcro.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm like, Velcro, we know, I was like, I don't remember the name, but I know that there's a guy who invented Velcro.
Right.
So I was going to say that it's kind of rude to take that away from him, but I like that
they gave him a little nod.
They got him in there.
So the lie was the caves. There are always caves. There will always be caves.
Right.
There was even a forest and a little clearing. If Archer had been there, there'd have been a slug. This is a Maria episode. There are caves.
There are caves.
But it was a good episode. Which makes it very strange for a Maria
It was a really
episode.
weird. I have never written a script for an episode that I enjoyed this much. That I can say that for sure.
If we ever get a Patreon, we are definitely going to need to cover the Lower Decks episode where they literally talk about cave episodes.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Oh
right.
yeah, the Jamie Loftus written episode. Yeah.
Porthos Good Boy Scale, my biggest and maybe only complaint about this episode was we had no Porthos, none at all. I mean, he could have been at the dinner table at least.
He could have brought in his mouth a little gift to Paul that Archer got for her. And
How great would it be? How great would it be if at the bar there's a beagle and it's his name is Aramis or Porthos is holy shit, is this dog traveling through time?
Saucy section. How sexy was this episode on a scale from that episode of Voyager where Harry Kim ended up on a planet where a bunch of ladies wanted to sex him up to Harry Mudd at any time in the universe ever.
Well, now you've made Jamie mad.
Is that Harry Kim episode hot?
Yes, I'm calling the Harry Kim episode hot. Because there were a lot of sexy ladies in that. I always do it backwards, don't I?
This is Jamie's argument that it needs to go from 0 to 10. And
every scale goes, you don't do a scale 10 to 0. That doesn't make sense.
Fine. Would you like me to do it backwards, Jamie? I can do it backwards.
No. I'm fine with the way you did it personally. Change it when I'm gone. I just don't agree. I'm not sure if that's the 10.
Also, Maria and I don't want to kink shame anyone.
Not at all. Oh. This wasn't a super sexy episode. There was that kind of little bit of romance between Maggie and Mistral.
Yeah, there was a little bit of nips.
Yeah, there was some nips. But it was very chaste, is what I said. It didn't really go anywhere. It was a very chaste sort of kiss. And then there was the changing scene where we saw Tamir's figure as she changed into a dress. For a minute, I thought that maybe they were going to have Jack the kid, have a thing for T'Pol, but that would have been...
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It would have been a weird age difference, and I'm glad they didn't go there. But thinking about it, as I thought more about it, I guess... They're all over 100 years old, so with any human ever, I feel like it's a weird age situation.
But it's so weird with a teenager is the most
I just feel like it starts to make me think about Trip more, because how old is Trip? Trip's in his 20s, you think? Maybe his 30s?
Late 20s.
He's immature for a human.
Yeah, and T'Pol's at least, 90?
She's younger than 95.
I love that the headline for this episode is Mistral bar owner age gap disturbance. Problematic age gap. That's awesome. She's 40 and he's 90. Where does he get off?
No technical difficulties this week. There was technobabble, but it was so peripheral to the plot that it wasn't worth mentioning, which is really exactly how technobabble should be. Like, the technobabble should be such that you don't give a shit because the story is good enough. What the flocks? Zero flocks in this episode. I have
not even one line from him.
Nothing. Yes, chef. I wish I could tell you about the food at dinner, but it was really kind of generic. T'Pol had her usual giant salad.
I was gonna ask, but assumed you were saving it.
I think the guys had actually finished their meals by the time we even got to the beginning of the episode. They were just drinking.
Do we ever see the food that the Vulcans are eating in the past?
No, I don't think we ever do. There were the peanuts or the pretzels, I guess, at the beginning, but that was about it. Like, we don't really see any of that. And I guess they did consider eating the deer and, didn't, but were, A kind of interesting where is HR this week, though. Tamir, Mistral, and Mo were living in close quarters for, quite a while, close to a year. And it was actually never mentioned, but it did kind of feel like Tamir had a little bit of a thing for Mistral because she gave him a lot of shit about Maggie in a way that felt a little like jealousy. But hard to tell,
it's
right?
also
it's hard to tell with Vulcans.
You're getting into, again, I know we don't have, or do the Vulcans have Prime Directive? We don't know at this point. Cultural contamination, we are in a less developed civilization.
Yeah, I did kind of wonder whether T'Pol intentionally told this story to get them thinking about the Prime Directive. Hey, look at this situation, and what if you... But, that never actually happened. So this is a segment of our show we like to call Will Tolerex, where we each give our recommendations for non-Enterprise related content that we've been consuming in our holodecks this week. Bryan, as our guest, would you like to give us our first recommendation?
Sure. Thanks for asking. David Lynch, the director, passed away recently, and it's very sad. I don't necessarily recommend his entire filmography to people. I would say that I think most people, if they're interested, should start with the film The Elephant Man. It's a black and white movie.
Oh, however, not Dune. Okay, fair enough.
Not Dune. Mm-hmm. I think The Elephant Man is the most accessible movie of his that also gives you a sense of what he's after, his style, his tone, what he's able to do. And it's a pretty straightforward story with some intense stuff. And I also very strongly advise, if you are going to see any of his other movies, if you're in a town that has a rep theater, to try to see it in a movie theater, because he is definitely one of those directors whose films were made to be seen on big screens and to see it as intended.
Awesome. Thank you. Bill, what you got?
This recommendation is going to go one of two ways with Maria. She is going to have one of two reactions to it, and I'm curious to see which it is. My recommendation is the TV series Resident Alien.
I love it. Love Resident Alien. Love it. Can't believe we haven't recommended this before. I love it.
I was curious to see if it was going to be oh yes or fuck you, you stole my recommendation for this week. Because for Carbon Creek, Resident Alien stars Alan Tudyk as an alien who has crash landed into a small American town, and he is trying to recover a crucial piece of technology and is interacting with the human population. The crucial difference is that he is a bad guy.
And so bad at integrating with humans.
So incredibly bad. He is a villainous alien, but he is limited as to what he can do because he doesn't want to be killed by the humans that he is around. And as Maria and I have discussed, an adult human who terrorizes small children is something that we absolutely love. It's a really fantastic series. So Resident...
In the 70s and the 80s, they weren't shy about adults being mean to kids.
Oh, yeah. No.
And then we got away from that, which is probably fine, but I like when it trickles in.
So...
yeah, it's great. It's a
Resident
great show.
Alien is Resident Alien is the quote unquote evil version of this show.
That's true. Jamie, what you got?
So I always come to TV shows very late because I really like watching TV, but I don't actually do that much of it.
Your recommendation is The Facts of Life.
It's TV.
I have a very long list of TV shows I want to watch, and then I use a random number generator to choose one. So this is a show that came out back in 2019, but I am finally watching it. It's Los Espookys.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's on HBO Max now, and it is so funny. It's a group of people. They're like horror technicians, and then they use those skills to take on jobs where they're creating like a horror situation, usually to like try to trick people somehow.
Fun.
It's a magical realism
Oh,
comedy.
I love that.
Yeah, it is real weird. It's got a lot of absurdist elements. It is in Spanish, or well, it's more like it's bilingual because it's mostly Spanish, but also some English. It's got Julio Torres, Fred Armisen. It
Cool.
is so funny, really good. Strongly recommend for anyone like me who missed it when it first came out.
Awesome. All right. Okay, y'all. I have a question. Am I allowed to give an anti-recommendation? A thing that I think you should absolutely not watch?
We'll allow it.
A Thomas recommendation?
Yeah, Thomas recommendation. Thank you. I do have a regular
100%.
recommendation, but my Thomas
You know,
recommendation.
I'm sorry, Maria. This podcast is extremely positive
Is
in
it?
everything that we
That's
do,
true.
and I really think you're going to be violating the spirit of what we bring in here, and I'm just extremely offended.
I mean, I feel like y'all are going to be surprised at this because you know me. I love Star Trek. I love all Star Trek. I love mediocre Star Trek. I mean, okay, I don't love mediocre Star Trek because that's what I'm watching at the moment, but I will give it a chance. I watched the Section 31 movie this weekend, and I had such high hopes for it, and it was really just bad. Michelle Yeoh, as always, is fantastic and gorgeous, and it is beautiful to look at, and she is beautiful to look at, and all the costuming
Yeah,
is wonderful. Like, it's incredible costuming.
She looks really badass in like
looks-
I was gonna say in the bus ads in Chicago.
Yeah.
It's on every bus.
She
ad.
looks
And
incredible.
She looks so badass in
but
those.
this was a bad
ads.
movie. Like, it was like it. At about halfway through, I realized this isn't a Star Trek movie. It's a generic, mediocre action movie, and it's not like it. The writing is terrible. The dialogue is mediocre at best. It's really, I was so disappointed, and I wanted to like this. I really did, and just couldn't get there. I was really sad. So
I know. I think I've actually made this stance that whatever the CIA Black Ops version of Star Trek is, like, this is my least favorite aspect of it.
well,
now.
but it's not even that. It's a victim of the world around us, right? So it's a victim of the strike part. You know, there was just a lot. It had like 7 different writers. They rewrote it multiple times. It was supposed to be a series, and then they made it a movie. It just had a lot of Hollywood that impacted it, I think, and that's what it feels like. It just turned into a sort of generic, mediocre action movie, and I was really sad. Every time that Michelle Yeoh is on the screen, it's a joy, but it's just not enough, unfortunately. So, but my actual recommendation is, and I was, again, probably the last person in the world to watch this. We also watched The Wild Robot this weekend, and oh my goodness, I could not recommend it highly enough. It is just beautiful, and it's a story, it's an animated movie, the story of a helper robot that gets into a crash and crashes onto an island with a bunch of wildlife and no humans, and has to figure out what it has to do then. And it's incredibly beautiful and really clever and very well done. So, The Wild Robot is my recommendation. And that's the episode. Thanks for listening. Next episode, Bill will be watching the episode Minefield. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where we can find you online.
Thanks so much for having me. One of the hosts of Trek, Marry, Kill It's a podcast that we cover episodes of Star Trek using our own kind of unique rating system. We ask a bunch of questions. You played Fuck, Marry, Kill in high school, probably. But, you know, if you're trying to figure it out with your friends of like, well, why do you want to fuck this person? You might ask some questions, you know. And so we ask a bunch of questions of the episode, try to arrive at our point. We're kind of doing like a temporal inversion here because we are recording this first, but I'm so happy that you all will have already joined me to do this episode on our show. So if you're new to the feed, go check it out. It ran in February, and so it was a lot of fun. I think. I don't know. I'm sending myself a message.
We
in the
had a
bottle.
great time.
But we do weekly. Yeah, we do weekly episode releases. We do themed months. What is this? April? April is the Captain is Dead month. So episodes where the captain has died and what happens. And also this month we're going to be doing a special look at Star Trek Prodigy, because that was an episode I could never bring myself to kill in the episode. So we gave them all we gave it all 40 episodes a blanket trek, and I'm going to bring in some special Prodigy experts, and we're going to kind of nominate or select episodes we think are actually Mary's, meaning Mary as the best, a great example of the show, of Star Trek, and of television in general. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. We haven't recorded that one yet, so I can't tell. But anyway, that's it. And thanks so much for having me. Check Mary K-Pod on social media is where you can find us as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Special thanks to K.O. Myers at Particulate Media for sound assistance, to our friend David for the beautiful cover art, and to John Stephen King for being the voice of our computer. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast app of choice, and tell your friends about it. If you didn't like it, we ask that you keep that to yourself. We really appreciate it.
What?
You know, not liking something is an emotion.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Enterprise Splaining, and on Blue Sky at Enterprise Splain. You can also email us any comments or questions, such as, how much do you think the Vulcans had to pay to break their lease on that apartment? To enterpriseflating@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can find us at Buy Me a Coffee at Enterprise Splaining. And see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Computer and program.
Wacka wacka, isn't this great Star Trek? Wah, wah, wah.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.